All right, so I see we've looked at the knight, we looked at the squire, and now we're looking at the yeoman. Most of the time, they're not given names, and they may be given names in their tale, but in the introduction, they don't have names. So, the yeoman. I'm going to give you two definitions of yeoman. All right, so yeoman. First definition is in the Middle Ages. He was a small farm owner. He was an owner of a small farm. It was a class of people in England called yeomen. They owned small farms. So they're not peasants. They don't work for people. They work their own property, which is a big deal. By the way, that's always, in most cultures, a very big deal. That automatically gives you status if you own property. If you rent the rest of your life, you don't have to worry about fixing your house because the landlord will do it. But you never get the experience of owning and sort of the status that goes with it. I'm sure there, with loans and things. So, owning property has always been a goal of most people in most societies. So that's a big deal in the Middle Ages. He owned a farm. Second definition, it's one who performs a noble service. So it would be a compliment to say you were a yeoman in your contributions to the play, or if you were given an award, you did yeoman's work for the team, whatever team that was, or the choir. It's someone who does good service. They serve well in a position. And I just thought that would be a great award. I'm sure I'll forget it. That'd be a great name for an award, is the Yeoman's Award, for the person that just kind of worked. They just simply worked hard. Maybe their grades weren't the greatest, but they just worked really hard. And that would be hard to single anybody out here, because all of you have exhibited hard work. All right, so what does he look like? Yeah.
He's just he had a good appearance and wore a coat, a green hood, and feathered arrows, and he was it says he was brightly clean, neatly sheathed.
His arrows were nice, neatly sheathed, and a baldric. Who does he sound like? Does that not sound familiar? He wore a coat and hood of green, and peacock feathered arrows bright and keen.
Robin Hood.
Sounds just like Robin Hood. No, he isn't Robin Hood, but he is kind of like, he's a forester. So to be a yeoman, he has to own land to get that title. But it sounds like he's also a hunter and a forester, someone who lives near a forest. You really can't have a farm in a forest, right? You've got trees, take up all the land. So he must own land, but also work as a hunter.
There was a yeoman with him at his side, none of the servants or each for so that's saying that he rode with or right side of the squire. That was talking about.
Yes, I hadn't really paid any attention to that. With him at his side, yeah. All right, so he has a dirk. You know what a dirk is?
Is it a cloak? Is it like a poncho?
No. Anybody else have? It's a small knife. And I've actually, there was a basketball player by that name.
Yeah, Dirk.
Right. I knew a guy named Dirk. Pretty cool name for a boy. Remember Beowulf? Remember the name that I thought was pretty cool? That E.J. Hassall's father's name? Thane, T-H-A-N-E. Be Dirk. These are pretty good male names. I think the nun is a very interesting person. Natalie, would you like to read about her? What they're all interesting to me, but the nun is particularly interesting because she's kind of you see.
There was also a nun of Paris. Her way of smiling was very simple and coy. Her greatest oath was only by Saint Louis. She was known as Madame Eglantine.
Yep.
And as well as she sang in service with fine intoning through her nose, she was almost seemingly, as she spoke daintily and morsel of her lips did she let fall, nor dipped her fingers in the sauce too deep, but she could carry a morsel up and keep. The smallest drop from falling on her breast, the courtliness, she had a special zest. And she would wipe out her lips so clean that not a trace of grease was to be seen. On the cup when she drank to eat, she reached her hand sedately for the meat. She certainly was very entertaining, pleasantly and friendly in her ways, and straining to counterfeit the courtly kind of grace. A stately bearing fitting into her place, and seemed dignified in all her dealings as for her sympathies and tender feelings. She was so charitably solicitous, and she used to weep if she but saw a mouse caught in a trap, if it were dead or bleeding. And she had little dogs she would be feeding with roasted flesh or milk or fine white bread. She bitterly wept if one were dead, or someone took a stick and made it smart. She was all sentiment and tender heart. Her veil was gathered in a seemly way, her nose was elegant, her eyes a glassy gray. Her mouth was very small, but soft and red, her forehead certainly was fair as red. Almost a span across the brows, I own, she was indeed by no means undergrown. Her cloak, I noticed, was a graceful charm, she wore a cool trinket on her arm. A set of beads, bauties tricked in green, whence hung a gold brooch of brightest sheen, on which there was first graven a crowned A, and lower a more vincent omnia.
Anybody translate that quickly?
Love conquers all.
Yeah, that's her motto, and I know the Bible in two places talks about love covers a multitude of sin, but love conquers all. To me, I associate that with romantic love. First of all, this is a nun. Do you know what a nun is? What nuns do? What they look like? What
I know people think the black stuff and the black thing in the head.
habit? It's called a habit. Yeah, that's kind of a uniform.
I know they always go to church, but I don't think.
Well, they live in a church, really. The convents
They
or
often run like old folks' homes and
Yeah.
orphanages.
they serve. They serve people like older people. Mother Teresa, she was a nun, right? I don't know exactly her official status.
She was the main mother.
What?
She was the matriarch of the convent.
Well, she was, she's a saint already, she died, and the Catholic Church made her a saint. She worked with lepers, she worked with people that were dying, I think. She picked really the hard case to work with. She was, yeah.
It says describe her manners.
Well, yeah, let's finish the nun part. You know what nuns do? They help poor people. What else do they? If they become a nun, do they get married and have a family?
No, there was.
They're what?
No,
They're bachelors, or they're, what?
They pursue a life of silence and like also like not interacting with many other people.
Right.
Like on a
They are married in a way, aren't they? Who are they married to?
race.
Right. That's the image that we have of heaven. We're the bride, collectively, we're the bride of Christ.
Don't they all have like wedding rings too?
I didn't know that.
Okay, I thought they all have a gold band.
I didn't know that. That's cool. That's interesting. Yeah?
That is impressive.
Yeah, hang on just a second. Anything else about the nun? All right, before you go, what do you not hear? Of course, we could list all the things that they say about the nun, but what are some of the things we just mentioned that is not mentioned in the passage? Yeah,
It doesn't really talk about how she like helps others.
no, not a bit. Or God. Doesn't talk about God if she's a nun. So you're going to get a description of a very, I would say, worldly sounding nun, which is a contradiction in terms, right? Because they renounce the world. They renounce marriage so that they can be married to Christ in a way. So what are some of the things that he mentions about her? Give me one, Freddie.
She like is very like polite and she has good manners.
Yeah, it says courtliness. It mentions courtly twice. I looked it up just to make sure. Courtly means elegant, but in an insincere, flattering way. And at least 3 times now in the passage, her sincerity is questioned. It says that she had to counterfeit a courtly kind of grace. When you counterfeit something, what do?
Fake.
It says that she seemed dignified. When you something seems rather than is, what does that suggest? It's not actually that. It just seems that way. So that's kind of odd. It doesn't mention God. It doesn't mention poor people. But it does mention the fact that she's well dressed. It mentions that she is very comfortable with courtesy and manners. You know, she could go to a fancy restaurant or someplace and be right at home. That seems odd. Anything else about it? Dave, do you see anything else? Or Zoe, do you see anything? Yeah. Anything else about her? Any detail about the nun?
Yeah, there's a line, she wore a coral trinket on her arm, a set of beads, the gaudiest tricked in Greek.
She wears jewelry. That seems strange to me for a nun. Zoe, did you see anything? Now, we said that she doesn't mention poor people or sick people, but who does she care for?
Animals.
Animals, dogs, little dogs, and mice. You saw a mouse in a mousetrap, she'd cry. Or if she saw a dead dog, she would cry. Now, I don't like seeing dead dogs, but I don't cry. So what's odd about it? Yeah. What's odd about it?
Seems like really fake.
And worldly, and an occupation that specifically renounces the things of the world to serve God. She seems extremely worldly. What might Chaucer be telling us about the church in the Middle Ages if we look at her as an example? Yes.
That's more like what it is today.
What does that mean?
Like they're not devoted to God.
They're not that dedicated. Yeah.
I was just saying that they're focusing more on earthly and worldly
Yeah.
possessions rather than.
I think that's what Freddie was getting at too. Yeah.
They're putting up a front, trying to look good.
All right, so the church, if she's any indication, and we're going to see some other people work for the church, and they're even worse than she is. I think he's criticizing the church in the Middle Ages. Doesn't mean everybody is. There's one guy that stands out in the prologue. He's the real deal. But she doesn't appear to be the real deal at all. So just keep that in mind. We've looked at several of them. We have just the second. Look at, it says, another nun, the secretary at her cell, was riding with her, and 3 priests as well. I don't know that those are separate people. I don't know that those are the next. I'm not sure who those people are. The other nun, as well as the other priest. Because when you start looking at the descriptions, I don't think we get all 30. We don't, there are 30 pilgrims. We don't get a description of all of them. I think as I've counted them, they seem more like 21 or 22. So there's a number of people that they don't include. So I think the best thing to do, I'm just looking at the time, is we'll stop here and we'll pick this up on Tuesday next week. And remember, Thursday, you're going to do the first 8 lines. Yeah.
Can you become a priorist?
Oh, yeah. Would you do one other thing? A priorist? I meant to do that. Write this down. A priorist is the second highest ranked official in an abbey. A convent. Where nuns are. So a prioress is the second highest rank. The abbot would be at the top, and I think they may be men. I'm not sure, but she is prioress, is second in command. So it's a pretty big job.
There's one lady I know in convents, they call them Mother Superior.
Yeah, I've read.
That's the interposition.